Hello, this is Trevor from Adreno Brisbane, and today we're doing Adreno tips. On today's tip, we're going to be talking about sustainability and ethics in spearfishing and how it can be one of the more, if not the most sustainable form of fishing, depending on the diver in question. So it kind of comes down to the diver themselves. A new diver will usually have a tendency to shoot a lot more fish, but the fish they're shooting aren't in a population that's in decline, usually things like brim, tarwine, blubberlips, things that are in high numbers and easy to shoot. So it's not so much of a worry that they're going to have an impact on that fish population. So not so bad. Whereas a more experienced spearfisherman, particularly one who's put in a lot of time and effort to find marks and locations where the fish are, won't shoot as many fish because they're trying to keep those populations in those areas. For instance, if you shoot a lot of fish off one spot, they'll stop coming back there. A prime example around Brisbane would be Amity Rockwall. A lot of years ago there was a large population of mangrove jacks that would come through there at summer. Due to heavy fishing over the last few years and spearfishing, they just don't come through anymore. You'll only get one or two, whereas we used to get schools of 20 or 30 coming onto that wall quite a bit. So ideally, what you want to do is just take one or two fish, preferably one of each species off a mark, and then leave it alone for a few months. Otherwise, you'll see over time less and less fish on that rock that you want to actually shoot. With more time and in the water spearfishing, you'll find that you'll actually get a lot of your best fish when you haven't shot another fish that you've seen. It's hard to do and it sounds really difficult at the start, particularly because you're a bit excited and you really want to kill that fish you've just seen. But normally, when you've been down on the bottom and you've relaxed and you've stationary for a little while, more fish will get inquisitive and come towards you, and you'll find that bigger and better, usually species as well, will come close to you and you'll get a shot on that fish. So sometimes it's good just to do a dive and not shoot anything, because you'll find the next time you dive on that same spot, the fish will be more acclimatized to your presence. On today's tip, we're going to talk about learning different areas where you can spearfish, as well as bag limits and which fish species are before you go. This can drastically help you because it's very easy to accidentally go spearfishing in an area you're not supposed to, particularly in Queensland, as there are green zones as well as public appreciation areas, which aren't on the same maps, and you have to look them up as you can't spear in either of those locations. There are also rules like you can't spear any public jetty south of Noosa. So just little things like that that are hard to know, but you do have to look into it because you'll still get fined whether you know it or not. Now, when it comes to bag limits and species identification, it's good to know these things, as if you know it before you go, you'll find you can shoot more really good fish that you otherwise may not have known what they were. Prime example would be large eye sea bream. A lot of people don't know what they are, also known as moo. And you could be swimming along, see a big school of fish on the bottom, and you'll see this weird shaped brim looking thing just hanging in the distance. If you don't know what that is beforehand, you'll write it off, swim off, and not realise you've just missed a chance on a really tasty and quite elusive fish. So it's good to study these things before you go. You'll find you'll land a lot better fish if you actually know the species that are in the area. Before you go as well, it's good to talk to any local fisheries organisation. From my experience, they're more than willing to give you maps, charts, GPS coordinates for the different areas you can and can't spear, because they'd rather tell you in advance not to go there than have to go through the rigmarole of fining you, going through all the things at court, getting the fine through. So just contact them. There's normally a fisheries office in any area where you're spearing, and they'll let you know where you can and can't spear. We're going to talk why it's good to spike or brain your fish as quickly as you can when you get them to the surface. This is two things. One, stops the fish from fighting and attracting sharks, because a flailing fish is something that sharks are attuned to, and it'll get them to come in on you a lot quicker than if the fish is lifeless at the surface. The other reason is it stops the fish from panicking and pumping excess blood into their muscles, which will keep the flesh in a better condition for you than if you allow the fish to panic for longer and longer and longer and just fill their muscle up with blood, which is quite bitter. You want as much of the blood to be out of the fish as possible for the ideal taste of the fillets. If you're going down to the bottom, try not to break off corals, any live corals in particular, as the fish use them for cover, and a couple of the fish will use them for food, for cleaning the algae off them in particular, triggerfish, some of your smaller parrotfish species. And if you damage too much of the coral, the fish will actually move off because there's not the cover there for them anymore. Breaking off things like weed instead of coral or rocks are fine. They grow back quite quickly, and you can use the weed to attract the fish without having to damage the actual reef you're on. Another thing not to do is leave any rubbish in the ocean. Paper products break down very quickly, so that's not the end of the world, but anything plastic related will be there forever. Causes injuries to the wildlife, some things eat it. doesn't break down, so try not to put plastic into the ocean. Another thing is try not to clean your fish in high traffic areas with other people, like particularly swimmers and that sort of thing. Swimmers, boaters, these stand-up paddleboard people that like to sweep the ocean clean. You don't want to really attract excess sharks to those areas, particularly up north where you can start attracting crocodiles to boat ramps and things like that. It's a good idea to clean your fish while you're offshore, or to clean it at home, throw it out or bury it. Another reason to try not to damage reefs and cleaning your fish in very public areas and things like that is it won't draw a negative view on spearfishing that you can sometimes get. Unfortunately, when people only see a small glimpse of any particular activity, it's very easy to form a miseducated kind of opinion about that particular sport, hobby, group. So if we portray ourselves a bit more in a better light, you'll find that we'll get a little bit less pressure from some of the people, particularly on social media these days. So what used to happen is if you wanted to get into spearfishing, you'd join up with one of the clubs. There used to be a lot more of them. You'd go in and the older divers would kind of run you through like what type of fish you hunt, why you're hunting, how to portray yourself in a good image, and you'd go along to competitions and you'd learn a lot more off older divers and other divers. With my own generation and younger of spearfishermen, it seems to have been a lot more, I saw it on the internet so I'm going to do it too, and I'm guilty of this as well when I was first starting out, kind of wanting to show off a bit more than actually spearfishing for the fun and the sport of it. So it is good to meet other divers and learn why it's good to have spearfishing ethics and why it's good to leave fish on a certain area and why it's good to always watch your dive buddy's back, because not only you could save his life, but if he goes and shoots a small reef fish and there's not much around and a large predatory fish comes in chasing his fish, you can actually go and then get a better fish by watching his back than being 100 miles away, kind of focusing on yourself and not really helping anyone else out. So it's really good to learn how to be a better team diver. You'll find yourself landing a lot more fish and also being a lot more popular and getting invited on more boats than you will if you're a very self-centered diver, kind of just looking out for yourself. The other thing I'd say is look into clubs. They are a good way to meet other divers and a good way to kind of get a feel for what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Thank you for watching our Adreno tips today. Hopefully these have helped you out on the ethics side of things. Come back next time, we'll start talking about how to hunt different species and getting a bit more in depth in that kind of side of things.